Hello and welcome to the third episode of my 4-minute mull. I'd initially planned to kick this week off with another look at the concussion issue in rugby. I was going to explain some of the nuance around what I'd mentioned in episode 2 last week. And I still will get to that eventually. But then on Saturday evening, I got into a Twitter discussion with many of you around this tweet, which you can see over my left shoulder. And I thought it was interesting enough and important enough to devote this episode to it. So the tweet is from Catherine Merry, who is a former track and field athlete, 400-meter runner from Great Britain. And it concerns her defense of one Linford Christie. The context being that earlier on in the day, she had posted something in support of Christie. And those of you who know your sport will understand that Christie was a former doper, convicted doper, actually failed 2 tests, got off on the first one, and then served 2 years for a steroid hormone later in his career. And Mary has always maintained that Christie was innocent. She was coached by him, and they allegedly have a very good relationship. And so this tweet was then offered as support. And in it, she basically argues that you can fail a doping test without being a cheat. And a number of you asked her to clarify that because there was an appearance of some, I guess, hypocrisy or double standard that was being applied. Because Catherine Merry today is a commentator and a pundit on track and field athletics. And she's quite outspoken about doping in the sport. And in particular, she's been quite critical of the Russian athletes and Justin Gatlin, who you know is the current 100-meter world champion, much to the sport's dismay. In any event, Mary goes on in this discussion to say that she doesn't have time to explain why she has this opinion. Now, it was discussed on Saturday night at length, actually long enough that I regret the lack of sleep it caused me on my weekend. But the thing I wanted to say today is that this discussion for me illustrates a really important point, and it's around what the role is of experts in sport. In fact, not just sport, in life. I mean, I'm a supposedly sports science expert. And in theory, what that means is that you should be able to ask me to explain some sports science concept, and I will then give you a believable, credible, trustworthy explanation or answer. So in other words, I am a provider of knowledge to you, an outsider. Now, as a pundit, Catherine Merry serves that same function for the sport, in the same way that a football, rugby, cycling, American football, whatever pundit does the same job. They are there to explain to you, the outsider, what is happening inside. And so what will happen, and has happened many times before, is that an athlete will fail a drugs test, a Kenyan marathon runner, or a Jamaican sprinter, or an entire country. And people like Catherine Merry, who are experts in the field, insiders, will be wheeled out on BBC or ITV or whichever news channel it is, and they will be asked, what does this mean? Can we trust this athlete? What will happen to their medals? What does this mean for the sport in general? And there is an inherent or almost an implied understanding that that expert is going to give some insight that is accurate and valid and credible and believable. The problem is that when you now have an athlete, A, Linford Christie, who fails a drugs test and is banned, and another athlete, B, let's say Justin Gatlin, who also fails test and is banned, but both continue to argue that they didn't dope on purpose. If A and B are handled completely differently by an expert like Merry, then when the next athlete, athlete C, D, E, F, all the way through to Z, fails a test, you and me and all of us as observers of the sport have to now believe and trust that this person is giving us an accurate portrayal. And how can we do that when we don't understand the difference between A and B, Christie and Gatlin? Why do you not believe that Christie was a doper, but you do believe Gatlin? Because obviously there's all kinds of accusations you can make. Is it emotion? Is it the fact that you know Christie, but you don't know Gatlin? Is it the fact that one's British and one's American? Why does this difference, this double standard apply? And the problem is that when that happens, often enough, it undermines the credibility of how knowledge is communicated from within the sport to outside it. And that is such a big issue for sport because it's happened for years and years and years and years, and it's a big part of why sport is in the deep hole that it is. And so I absolutely believe that it is right to hold people to a standard that says, explain why you think what you think. Explain the difference. Because how else will we in future be able to evaluate whether you are trustworthy and reliable? Can we believe you, given that you might or might not know this athlete, and that might skew your position? So if you have information that is germane to the case and can help us understand this hugely complex issue in anti-doping, then share it. Tell us. And it might seem harsh, but I absolutely believe that that's the standard to which we have to hold expert commenters and journalists and people whose jobs it is, whose responsibilities it is, to communicate information from inside to outside. If we stopped doing that, then all hope is lost, because then the system can just feed us any lie it wants to, and that's not good enough. And that's all I have to say. As usual, I've exceeded my 4 minutes. I apologize, but I will get better at it. Join me next time.